Hello everyone, welcome to my review of the brand new Campfire Audio Grand Luna. It's brand new because it's their most recent release. This is Campfire's latest sort of, flagship range IEM. It's priced at $1,400. Of course, they have more expensive IEMs that are priced closer to $2,000. But this is something of a milestone for Campfire because it combines a planar driver with balanced armatures wrapped up in this ergonomic shell, which I'll show you, and it comes bundled with its own DAC. So this in many ways is perhaps Campfire's most complete offering, and I say that in more ways than one. So I'll show you what the unboxing is like, right? And I do bump into a variety of things, so don't mind if I do. This is what the box opens up to, but of course these IMs are here. I've just decided to tuck them away inside. So this is what the IM looks like, and as you can see, this is perhaps one of Campfire's best looking IM if you like this sort of a cherry color, which I do. And I think the contrasting metal faceplates, all these facets are just stunning. I'm a watch guy, as might be evident, and so I really dig the metal, these facets, and the way these facets shine, the see-through resin, the red coloration, and this is such an improvement in its cable quality. Like, this is one of the best cables I've ever used, let alone in one of the best. I mean, of course, it's one of the best cables I've used from Campfire. Yeah, so it has a plethora of stuff, so I'll get into all that. But firstly, the background of the company. Campfire is one of those brands that does inspire a strong heritage. Is based out of Portland, Oregon, and they've insisted on continuing to be a boutique artisanal sort of an identity. Continue to maintain that, which I love. So the great thing about them, and what is very strong about the brand, is they just don't produce one after another mass-produced target adherent IMs just to check boxes. What they do is they release IMs with personality, and over the years I think you've seen that personality in different forms, whether it's Andromeda, which partially defined the house sound for a long time with sparkling treble and airy staging. Then there was Solaris, which was trying to be big and bold, had mixed reactions because of its larger shell, but then they came out with the smaller Solaris, which had a great bass. And then there was a trifecta, and everything that happens before and after trifecta, I think, can be considered a milestone in anyone's IM journey, especially if you've heard the trifecta, I think, because it was a three dynamic driver experiment that divided the community but created a cult following. And I think the opinions against the trifecta were far fewer, honestly, and far less intense than those that favored it, because those that favored the trifecta retired from the hobby. The Grand Luna feels different. It's less it's less experimental in its approach. It feels like Campfire is trying to produce a refined flagship that can stand next to the other $1,000, $1,500 tier IMs. The name itself, right, Grand Luna, suggests that that they are trying something cosmic, something ambitious, something that's not flashy or gimmicky, but something that's serious. In terms of specs and design, like I said, this has one large planar magnetic driver, which is a 14 driver, and which handles bass and mid-range, two custom balanced armatures that cover upper, mids, and treble. Instead of a traditional crossover, Campfire uses additive acoustic optical inclusion, which is AAOI. It's a form of tuning, which basically means that each driver has its own acoustic chamber, which allows them to blend naturally with heavy-handed crossover circuitry. I talked about the shell design. It's compact. It's very ergonomic. This 3D printed shell. It's translucent red. It's hand-finished stainless steel lid, so to speak. The faceplate is flame treated with the Campfire logo, and it is very beautiful. And this has a very nice finish. The fit is, it's smaller. It's similar to the Andromeda shell, which means it's more ergonomic and less fatiguing than, let's say, the Solaris. The cable is the new TimeStream modular cable. And yeah, you can swap between a 3.5 mm and you can also swap between a 4.4 balance termination without changing cables, which is just fantastic. It comes with these sets of tips. And like I said, it even bundles a Cirrus Logic CS43131 based dongle DAC, which is an awesome move because it ensures buyers can get a straight, complete experience out of the box no matter what source they use. And they have this really, really nice looking carrying case, which I do have to show you because I think this is stunning. The colorway is just beautiful. It's the shade of crimson, magenta, red, whatever, and then it's got this mesh pouch inside, which you can protect your IEMs further. Yes, I'm a big fan, and this, of course, is the way in which you can terminate to a 3.5. So I'm a big fan of what it comes with. I think this is just absolutely stunning, the accessorization. So big shout out to Campfire for this very complete accessorization at this price point, which I really, really appreciate. Okay, now tonality wise, the bass here is delivered by that big, bold planar driver. So that is very, very cool. And the bass is excellent. It's really high quality bass. It's not just large bass. It's not just big bass. I mean, kick drums will hit with so much authority, and sub bass which will reach the lowest of the lows, but stay clean. It's certainly not a boomy or bombastic presentation. It's very controlled bass. It's dissimilar in that sense from, let's say, the trifecta. It's certainly dissimilar from the trifecta because the trifecta bass is a little more mid bassy. It's a little more boomy. It's a little more overpowering, which I personally loved. But the trifecta, speaking about the trifecta makes me miss it, so I might actually get it back. I'm thinking. I've often tried driving IEMs with some of the higher end, desktop solutions I have, and it works really well. And the trifecta sounds amazing. The Jewel, for example, from Aroma, which is one of my favorite IEMs of all time, does sound very good off even my Riviera Lab EIC10, which is not something I suggest you try at home because it is a $20,000 amp. But anyway. I do want to talk about mid-range because the mid-range is basically where the Grand Luna might surprise some people. The mids are smooth, rich, and natural. I mean, vocals will sit forward enough to feel intimate, but not so forward that they dominate. I love the male vocals on the Grand Luna. They sound very grand, they sound very chesty, because I feel like a lot of times when we index for vocals, we are in many ways trying out IEMs vis-a-vis their performance when it comes to female vocals, because I for one love female vocals. I listen to a lot of rock and metal, but then I switch it up and I listen to female vocals for the sake of contrast, for the sake of variety, for the sake of DEI. I'm just joking, but yeah, I do think a lot of people are similar. But male vocals on the Grand Luna is just really, really stunning, guys. I do want to mention that. Acoustic instruments sound stunning. Guitar, piano, strings, they all sound stunning. They sound very timbrally convincing, let's say, which is great for a planar driver, because a lot of planar drivers have their own timbral quirks, which can be something that is off-putting. But the Grand Luna does not have any noticeable timbral from timbre. Does not have any noticeable timbral quirks, which I appreciate. And acoustic instruments are the sort of, way in which I think you test for timbre. And the trifecta was pretty awesome for timbre, I have to say, because of its dynamic driver awesomeness. And because these guys are venturing into a different sort of a space with this IEM, which is, of course, a space in which, they're trying a multi-driver configuration, and they're trying the planar 14mm planar timbre and trying to fuse it with the ballast armature timbre. One would assume that they might do one or two things wrong, which they don't actually. The mid-range is what surprised me in terms of how good it is. I would even say that the mids are comparable to some of the best mids I've ever heard. So the mids are certainly a surprise, and that's another reason why I'm calling it the most complete Campfire IEM of all time. Because the mids are certainly a surprise. I wasn't expecting the mids to be this good. But they are. If you have heard the Solaris from Campfire, which had awesome mids, very woody mids, this is similar. The treble is handled by the custom BA drivers, and it's a nice balance between sparkle and smoothness. There's enough extension to give cymbals shimmer, and there's plenty of air. But it's never sharp or piercing, and I want to mention that. Andromeda's treble some listeners did find it to be a bit too energetic. But the Grand Luna is not like that. It smooths out the treble. It's even smoother than the Andromeda. It's engaging, its detail, it's extended, but it's fatigue-free. So longer listening sessions are very easy with this tuning. The overall signature, the Grand Luna, feels balanced, immersive, musical. It's not reference neutral, nor is it colored in a wild way. It gives you energy in the lows, richness in the mids, and refinement in the highs. It works across genres from EDM to jazz to classic rock, and it adapts really well to both studio recordings and live tracks. I do want to talk about the subjective stuff, so that's technical performance, like soundstage, imaging separation, resolution, dynamics, and so forth, right? The soundstage is very spacious. It's both wide and it's both deep. I do think that when I listen to live music, it does feel like it's live. It's not artificially exaggerated, but it does create this very credible sense of space. The imaging and separation is excellent. Instruments have their own space. You can, even in dense mixes like rock and electronic drops, you can pick apart individual lines. The resolution is outstanding. It's not super micro digital heavy at this price point. It is $1,400, right? And I can think of at least those Symphonium guys who produce slightly more resolving IEMs. But it's still outstanding, and I think it trades blows with even more expensive IEMs like the Sony IER-Z1R, which is around $1,700. But like I said, it doesn't overemphasize textures or analytical detail. It does aim for natural, coherent presentation. Dynamics are very strong. Macro dynamics are impactful. You feel the crescendos and the drops with weight. Micro dynamics are also solid. This is a very dynamic IEM. So you understand those subtle shifts in vocals and you know those lower gradations and volumes. And timbre, like I said, is one of the highlights. It's got this planar speed with BA sparkle. It's very organic. So where does the Campfire sit in today's market? It's more balanced and refined than the Andromeda with the smoother treble. It's perhaps less polarizing than the Trifecta, while also retaining a lot of the Trifecta's power. It doesn't have the bass power of, let's say, one of my favorite IEMs of all time, which is the Astrolith. It doesn't have the treble extension of the let's say a lot of the Symphonium IEMs, which have very airy and extended treble, but it still is able to achieve an airy treble and good sense of stage. It beats the Symphonium IEM for timbre, for bass power, for bass credibility, for how convincing the bass is. Compared to the 64 Audio U60, I think this trades for some clinical precision for a warmer, immersive sound. You can also compare it to the, let's say, Theo Audio Monarch MK3, where the Monarch MK3 is perhaps a little more acerbic in its, chase for a resolution. But this feels like more of a human tuning, so less about, analytics and more about the soul and the emotions. And also compared to Sony IEM-9, it's got a more convincing bass, it's more spacious and dynamic, and perhaps it's slightly less reference focused. So at $1,400, it does sit in a very competitive space, but Campfire has certainly, once again, crafted something that feels distinct, musical, immersive, and just beautifully made. To sum it up, the Campfire Audio Grand Luna is one of the best rounded IEMs and one of the most complete Campfire IEMs that Campfire has released at a very competitive price point. They do take their artisanal identity to a different level with this, and it pairs it with a tuning that's smoother, more refined, and even more versatile than a lot of IEMs in the market. Wonderful looking IEMs. $1,400 is not cheap, but this is a seriously confident product that from a company that has learned a lot over time about what customers like. Campfire tends to produce IEMs that work really well as a portfolio, and this, I think, is a wonderful addition to the latest portfolio. A big shout out to Campfire for another amazing product. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for the next one. Bye bye.